been a couple minutes, so we're going to go ahead and get started for the first Press Play webinar of the year. Thank you very much to everyone who's joining us online today. And if you're watching this recording at home, thank you for coming back and sitting with us for the next hour or so. I'm just going to start with a, whoopsies, not with that. We're just going to, there we go. We're just going to start with a quick acknowledgement of country. So we here are on Gadigal land in our head office here, and we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the countries that we're all meeting on today, and we recognise their continuous connection to the land and to the waters, and we pay our respects to all First Nations people present today. So you might recognise some familiar faces on this screen here. This is our panel for today. We've got a bunch of Playgroup New South Wales experts. So if you've been involved in some of our programs and services, you would have seen some of them around. We've got the lovely Allana, Lauren, Serena and Jess joining us today. I've got their bios up on the screen just to give you a bit of a context of where they've been and what they do here with us. But I'll let the girls introduce themselves as they come through, and they're just going to be taking you through some of their their passion areas for today. So we'll get started with Allana, who's going to take us through some play-based learning.
Thanks, Jada. Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is going to be 4 quick mini sessions, I think, on a few areas that are helpful for you. So, yeah, welcome. My name's Allana. I'm the peer support lead here at Playgroup New South Wales. I have over 25 years experience in play, being an early childhood teacher, director, higher learning teacher, and inclusion specialist and advocate. Today, I just want you to all feel comfortable with play and knowing its strength in relationship to building and growth, relationship building and growth. And play knows no boundaries, and I hope today you'll see that play defies costs and resources, and that for play, children's play is innate and is their source of development. So I thought I'd start with a definition on play. It's from our curriculum guiding document, the EYLF, that supports early learning services across the nation. So play-based learning capitalises on children's natural inclination to be curious, explore and learn. Children actively construct their own understandings that contribute to their own learning. In play experiences, children integrate their emotions, thinking and motivation that assist strengthen brain functioning. They exercise their agency, intentionality, capacity to initiate and lead learning, and their right to participate in decisions that affect them, including about their learning. So you can see that play is holistic and as a whole developmental tool. Children don't compartmentalize their learning into subjects. It happens all at the same time. So why does play matter? Play encompasses the development of all domains. Just flick one back, Jada. Play encompasses the development of all domains, including cognitive, physical, social, emotional, and communicative. It is the right of every child to play. And in Australia, we've signed the UN Declaration Rights of the Child. That means that they actually have the right to play. So play allows for expression of personality and uniqueness, offers multimodal play, which is just linking pedagogies together so that children learn in a holistic manner. It enhances thinking skills and lifelong learning dispositions such as curiosity, persistence, and creativity. It enables children to make connections between prior experiences and new learning and to transfer their learning from one experience to another, so generalization. Assists children to develop and build relationships and friendships. Develops knowledge acquisition and concepts in authentic contexts, builds a sense of identity and strengthens self-regulation and physical and mental well-being. So children are doing a lot when they play. Okay, next one, please. Thank you. So what influences play? This might sound like a strange question. However, if we want children to reach their full learning potential, we need to look at all the elements for success. This is derived from a pedagogy in Italy called the Reggio Emilia approach, and it is about the 3 elements that influence play. So when you're in early learning services and play groups, these are the things that should be all working together to make quality play. So that encompasses the environment, what materials are available, how does the environment feel, how accessible is the environment, do the children have agency, are they able to choose their own learning? Is there obvious collaboration? What learning is available? And then the next aspect, which is the educators, are they available? Is there role modeling? Can they scaffold learning and continue to build on children's development based on their understanding? And are they approachable? And then the families, and the uniqueness of Playgroup is that the families are here with us all the time. So as families, how are you invited into play? How are your ideas, values? Can they make decisions? Can you make decisions about the play environment? Do you feel comfortable about approaching educators and engaging in the rhythm of the session? So when you're in a space, these are the 3 things that you should be looking at to see the high quality influence of play. Before I get to this slide, I do have another one that couldn't be uploaded today. Being an inclusion advocate, I really like to describe this one, so I hope that's okay. It's just encompassing the fact that every child is unique. No child learns in the same way or has the same interests, and equity does not look like equality. So on the page, there's 3 pictures, and there's the first picture, and there's a sort of short, medium, and large person on the page. There's a wall in front of them, and every person has been given the same size box. But this means that the short person can't see over the fence, so they can't see what's going on. The medium-sized person can just see over the fence, so has sort of a straight view across of what's happening. And then the taller person has a great bird's eye view and can see absolutely everything. And we can see how that's not really an inclusive space when we look at that equality. When we look at equity, it's the same picture. However, the tallest person hasn't been given any box because they can see over the fence without that. The medium person has been given 1 box because they can see over the fence with that. And the shorter person has been given 2 boxes to give them the same
Groups New South Wales
as everybody else. But the best part about this slide is that I finally found a picture that shows me something that's much more enticing for inclusion, which is called liberation. And rather than giving everybody these boxes, they've just taken away the fence and taken away the boundaries to being inclusive, and that the environment is actually needing to be supportive of the people and not the other way around. So I wanted to preface that with this slide, because regardless of your child, perhaps their disability or their stages of development, these are just typical stages, and it's up to us as educators and up to us as families to provide these children with what they need to succeed in that space. So I've just given, I really think we can focus on the 2 other columns around learning and play ideas. And you can see there that nothing costs money, and you should have everything at home ready to go. But just remembering that this is typical type of development, and that all children learn at their own pace, and that is okay. And that all play can be facilitated dependent on your child's ages and stages. So I wanted to use this slide to talk about what does play look like for you, because often parents feel like, I don't know what to do. But in actuality, if you're playing with your child, you're probably doing a lot of these things already. But some of the other things that you can do while you're playing is potentially be intentional, listen and respond. For example, I heard you count to 3. Following the child's lead, allowing the child to be in control of the game. For example, and where will we go once we've eaten our soup? Breaking tasks that are frustrating for children into smaller steps. For example, gosh, look, that looks tricky. I wonder if we first put the container down and then try and open the lid. Using repetition and routines such as visuals, timers, and familiar objects. And as an example, when we sing the pack away song, it's time to finish our game. And if those things happen, continuously, children feel in control and empowered over their environment and their play. And things like supporting communication, which Lauren will go into further, are not just about reading and writing letters and numbers. It's drawing, it's just looking at signs around the spaces, it's role playing, it's talking, it's reading books. So I'm sure all of you can nod to some of those things. So the next slide just talks about some resources and support. As I said, I'm the lead for peer support, which is primarily about a program called My Time. And often what happens for families is there's lots and lots of ideas for children, but nothing for them. So My Time supports families, supports the carers, and it is space just for them to be able to come and talk and get ideas and build capacity. So if anybody is interested in gaining further support for themselves, they're more than welcome to take a look at that link. Playgroup New South Wales has some wonderful archived activities that are free and easy to do. And the Raising Children's Network is something that is probably your go-to resource in all things child development, health, and play. And so I just really wanted to finish by reminding everybody that play is for everyone. It looks different for everyone. It supports all children. It's essential for learning, and it has no age limits.
Thank you so much for that, Allana. Allana will be hanging on with us until the end of the session for a Q&A once we've finished all the 4 mini presentations. So if you've got any burning questions, keep them up here, write them down, and Allana will be on the line for that later on. I'll now move on to Lauren, who's going to join us for supporting your child's development.
Hello, everyone. All right. So for those of you who haven't met me before, my name's Lauren. I have a background as a speech pathologist and a primary school teacher, and I've spent my career really focusing on improving the outcomes and the inclusion for children with additional needs and their families. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you can support your child's development for communication at home and in some day-to-day activities. But first, let's have a talk about what is communication. So it's more than just talking. It's really about attending, listening, understanding, and expressing yourself. And children need to develop some of these skills before they can develop others. So, for example, they need to be able to attend so that they can actually listen. They need to listen so that they can develop an understanding. And they need to understand words or phrases and the purpose of that communication before they can express themselves. I like this diagram as a way to really communicate that and show that children need to develop those foundations for communication before they use language. So we start at the roots of the tree. Children need to be able to attend and listen. They need to have the social communication skills, such as turn taking, being able to interact or engage with somebody else. They need to have play skills, such as understanding cause and effect. And they need to have their sensory needs met. So they need to feel safe and secure in that environment so that they can learn and develop. If they're overloaded by the sensory inputs in their environment, then they're not going to have the capacity to take in and to learn the language around them. So once they have those skills in place and those environments set up for them to learn, they can then move up the trunk of the tree. And this is where they begin to understand language. So they understand that language has a purpose. It can get their needs met. They can know what each word or what each phrase actually means and the intention behind it. Once they understand through repetition, they can then begin to use that language for the purpose of communicating themselves. So for some children, they may not use spoken language. They might use another way to communicate, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And finally, it leaves us with those add-ons of speaking clearly, speaking fluently, saying all of the different sounds that we have in our vocabulary, in the words that we say, constructing sentences, using grammar correctly, and building on their vocabulary. So, as I mentioned, expression can look different for every child and in different situations as well. So, we do all use a whole lot of nonverbal communication to express ourselves every day. So, children and adults express themselves using eye contact, by sharing and taking turns, by gesturing, pointing, reaching, or being led to something. We express ourselves with facial expressions, with the way that our bodies move and the body language that we're expressing to others. We use sounds, babbling, and vocalizations. We also can use signs, pictures, or alternative communication. which Serena will go into in a little bit more detail. So as communication partners, it's really important for us to acknowledge all of these types of expression, because that helps our children to feel heard and listened to. And then we can model a different way or a more appropriate way that they might be able to communicate. So if your child's trying a new food, they might make a face or push it away. You might then model the words yucky or sign yucky so that they understand or have a new way to communicate that need. All right, so let's look at some strategies that you might be able to use in your everyday activities. So talk about what you're doing, what's going on around you, what your child's doing. It just increases the exposure to language for your child. And in that talking, use a variety of language. So name items, actions, describing different things, talking about feelings and using social language, asking questions. It shows them that language can be used for lots of different purposes. Creating opportunities to communicate can be done throughout your day by offering choices or being silly, putting a pair of shorts on your head or putting them on your arm and asking your child and waiting for your child to respond to that. Creating those silly moments gives your child a chance to actually respond and be like, no, Mum, you're being crazy. That's not where it goes, and they can show you in their own way. Also, using sign and natural gestures can support your child to help understanding what you're saying. And I won't go into more in that. I'll let Serena do that. Following your child's lead. So engagement is what is really essential. As Allana was talking about, play is where children learn. And so if we can find ways that our child is engaged and work with them and play with them in the way that they're playing with toys, then that will really help them to engage in that interaction with you and learn from it. Using comments rather than questions. So comments have actually been proven to get more varied and higher quality communication responses than questions. So rather than asking questions and getting one word or a yes/no answer, it would be great if you can make comments and then support your child to hear new language or to develop different ways that they might be able to use language in the future when talking about whatever you might be playing with. Repetition is really important. Kids need to hear the same word over and over again. So when you're playing, when you're talking with your children, don't be scared about saying the same word multiple times. All you're doing is supporting them to learn and understand that. What you can do is just add one more word than where your child's at. So if your child is babbling and not yet using words, you could just use one word when you're describing something. If your child is starting to use one word, you could use two words when you're describing something, like red car or car fast. So using that one level up from your child will support them to see where they can take that next step without pushing them too far or speaking too much so that they can't actually understand you or then utilize that, that information that you're giving them to develop their own communication. And watch, wait, and listen. So this idea is that you have to, after you've had your turn or you've tried to communicate with your child, you watch and you wait for your child's response. You need to give them time to process what's happened and think about what their response might be. So count to 10 in your head. It might seem like ages, and it is, but that really gives your child time to process and to have a response. And then you need to listen. And that might be with your eyes as well as your ears, as we were talking about some of those nonverbal responses your child might make. So there's some general ideas. In general, all of that can be achieved through play. So you choose the games and activities that are of interest to you and your child. Focus on routines. They're a great way to have repetition and to develop processes that your child can then expect and understand what the next step might be, and then they can build their communication into that. Songs are great because of the repetitiveness of them. You can pause and give them the option to continue that song or to request for more. And reading books is a great way, especially rhyming books is amazing for development and language skill development. All right. So again, just some resources for you. Raising Children's Network is really the place to go if you need anything. They have a huge range of topics about childhood development. Speech Pathology Australia has lots of information for parents about, they have milestone checklists and a page to find a speech pathologist in an area near you. And if you do have concerns about your child, you can talk to your local GP or your child health nurse, and they can give you information and advice on where to go next. All right. Thank you all. I'll pass on to Serena, who's going to talk to you about keyword sign.
Hi, everybody. My name is Serena. I am a speech pathologist by background, and I have worked in the disability sector and working with children for my whole time as a speech pathologist. And here at Playgroup New South Wales, I support all the different playgroups and staff learning about keyword sign and different ways to communicate. So, what is keyword sign? Some of you may be familiar with keyword sign or alternative ways to communicate, and Lauren spoke about different ways that we can all communicate. We can use language by talking, we can use sign, we can use pictures. Children start by communicating with their eyes and with crying, with the noises that they make. And sometimes children don't learn to talk as the next step and need a bit of support with a visual way to communicate, and that's where keyword sign can be really beneficial. But for keyword sign to be successful, we as the communication partners need to model that and help our little children learn how to communicate using sign. So it is designed for people who have communication difficulties or maybe late to learn how to talk. The signs are used are the same as the deaf community, but I do want to make the distinction that it is not Auslan, which is the language used by the deaf community, but the signs are borrowed from the Auslan language. And another key difference is that speech is used with signs, and so we are speaking as we are signing. So that is something to remember as we're modelling that for our children. And only the key words are signed in a message. So we're not signing every single word. We just sign the main words that we want the children that hold the most meaning in that sentence. So what are some benefits of keyword sign? Because sometimes it doesn't feel natural to be using sign, but there are many benefits to adding this to your way of communication if your child or children are having difficulty learning to talk. So it provides a visual aspect to the information when you're speaking. So we know visuals last longer than words. As we're speaking, the words are arbitrary, they come and go very quickly. But if you have a sign that accompanies the speech, the child is able to understand that and absorb that easier than they can just the words. It can help to promote and maintain attention and eye contact. So it draws the person, your child, into what you're trying to say because they have something to focus on, not just on your face. They're focusing on the sign that you're making. So it can also bring that attention to what you're trying to say. And like I said, the sign lasts longer than the words, so they can absorb that and process that easier than just the words. Often signs look like what they mean. I will say not always. I'll go through a handful of signs, but some signs do look like what they mean. For example, eat and drink. We probably use that as natural gestures anyway. Sometimes, you know, when there's a loud environment and you're trying to get someone's attention, you might do this. And I think universally, most people know that means drink. So already you are equipped with a handful of signs, and it's just remembering to start pairing that when you're with your children and doing that in your day. and it also just promotes good language models. So Lauren talked a bit about simplifying our speech and making those messages a bit easier to understand. So we're not saying too much to our children who might be having difficulty learning language. By using sign with speech, we are doing shorter sentences. It helps us to model some really good language. So as we practice the signs and the speech, we can help our children absorb what we're trying to say, and that receptive language, that understanding of language can increase, which then can aid that expressive language, which is then the talking or the signing. So I do want to go through a handful of signs. Some of you might know these already. So feel free to practice along with me. I can't see you, but please practice. And it's really important that you say the word that you sign. So eat or food. We get our, I will start by saying we have what's called our dominant hand, which is your main hand that you use, and that's your signing hand. And then we have our helper hand, which is the other hand that we use to assist with some of the signs. So we have some one-handed signs and some two-handed signs, but the main dominant hand is used to sign. So if we all get our dominant hand, we've got eat or food, and it's a double tap on the chin. So you might say, let's eat, or time for breakfast, or are you hungry? And that way, we've got a sign to go with your message. Sorry, we've got our hand in a bit of a claw, and we just shake it next to our cheek. We go, sorry, and it's just up and down twice. I will say that it's important we use a range of signs for different communication functions. We don't just want to use nouns, which is naming words. We want to be modeling signs that we're going to use throughout our day in different contexts. So sorry is a good one, whether it's your child wanting to say sorry to you or you saying sorry to the child. It's very important that we practice all different types of signs. More is quite a common one. Again, we get the claw and we put it on our chest. We say more. Might be like, more food, or more bubbles, or do you want more food? And then we have drink. So I did that earlier. Drink. Are you thirsty? It's time for some water. Are you hot and thirsty? So we just sign the main word. Toilet. This is a common one. It's a good one because children do this function many times a day, need to go. So it gives an opportunity for them to make this request or tell you that they're going. So having opportunities to use signs are very important. So we get this is our helper hand and our dominant hand. Our helper hand is in a palm and our dominant hand has a pointer finger, and we do a double tap on the palm. Go toilet. So this is also the sign for tea, and we're just doing the sign for tea and tapping it twice. Toilet. Do you need to go to the toilet? Oh, you need to go to the toilet. Or it might be more of a command. Okay, time to go to the toilet before we get in the car. Bubbles. This is just a nice activity, very common to do with young children. So it's nice. It's a nice opportunity to use this sign. Bubbles. So it's again just our hand in a sort of little claw scrunched together, and we just go bubbles. Finished. We have the thumbs up sign, and we just say finished. We just shake it back and forth. Sit is our helper hand, and then our dominant hand on top. We just say sit. We might say sit down, or everybody sit over there near the door. Time to sit. Help is a good one. It gives our children a way of asking for help if they need to, which some children, if they don't have a useful way or a constructive way to ask for help, it might come out as a bit of a squeal or a noise or a whinge. But if we give a way that they can ask for help and that's understood, this is a really good sign. So we get our flat palm, our helper hand, and then we get our dominant hand on top and we say help. I will add, some signs can be tricky for young children to do. So if it's not done correctly by them, that's okay. Even if they put a hand on top like this and say help, we still honor that attempt. We model the correct signs. We're always modeling the correct sign. So in time, they can learn how to do it correctly. But if they're doing something that's approximate of the sign, that's great. At least they're showing you that they're trying to ask for help. So we have our helper hand and our dominant hand, and we say help. And we might say, I need help. And we direct the sign to ourselves, or we say, oh, you need help. We might direct the sign to them. Like is our dominant hand, and we just put it on our chest, say like. And this is where facial expressions are really important. It changes the message that we're trying to say. It's just like when we're using talking to communicate, facial expressions hold a lot of meaning. So we say, I like that. And it's the same sign as if you want to say, I don't like something. So for example, in meal times, you might say, I don't like it. Oh. So your facial expression is extremely important. The sign stays the same, but the facial expression changes the meaning. Happy is both our hands in flat like this, and then, oh, sorry, no, happy is our dominant hand, our helper hand on the bottom, dominant hand on top, and we do this, happy. I'm happy today. And again, extremely important to use your facial expressions. Are you happy? Did you have a happy day? And then we have play, which is our two hands like this, and we just a double circle. Play. It's time to play. So I hope that list equips you with a good start to introducing some signs. I don't expect you to know them all, but I do hope at least you can take away a couple that you can use in your day. I often suggest just choosing one routine in your day that you can start practicing the sign in, whether it's, focusing on more during meal times or more during bath times or even bubbles in bath time, pop the bubbles, more bubbles, and just practice that till you feel confident in pairing your sign with your word and modeling that before introducing a new sign. And another thing I will just suggest is that children will not copy the sign straight away. Some will, but modeling the sign and waiting for them to understand what that means is important before they are going to start using that sign. Just because they don't start using it straight away does not mean that they're not learning and comprehending and helping their understanding of language. And just some resources and support. So if you already have forgotten some of the signs I've been through, you can jump onto the Keyword Sign website where you can search for different signs. They have lots of lovely videos on using sign in songs and books. And they have if you've got a footy lover in your home, a footy keyword sign book that you can also access electronically. Scope Australia also has keyword sign resources. Sign Planet is another way you can look up signs, and they play little videos of what the sign are. And there's also the Auslan Dictionary app. So if ever you can't remember a sign, please jump onto one of these websites or apps and you'll be able to find that sign. Thank you so much. I hope you learnt something and can walk away with a sign. I'm going to introduce Lauren. I'm going to introduce, we've had Lauren, I'm going to introduce Jess.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jess Passiola. I'm the program lead for community playgroups at Playgroup New South Wales. But prior to stepping into the community space, I worked in centre delivery for over 13 years. So I'm here today to talk to everybody about some considerations when thinking about childcare or your childcare options, or and just kind of going over some common questions that people may have, especially now that we're entering into that new school year. You may have some questions, or you might be starting to consider or think about sending your child to childcare this year. So I'll just start by sort of saying that, you know, when you're choosing childcare, the biggest things to consider are what's going to be right for your family. It's definitely a very personal decision, and it can definitely be swayed by your family's needs, values, and the routine. So just make sure that you're choosing something that really suits those things. There are definitely several options when you're considering childcare. So as you can see on the screen, you've got preschool. Preschool is tailored for children ages 3 to 5 years and is typically run a shorter day. So it does go a 9 to 3. Rather than your long daycare options that do offer that a bit more flexibility in how many hours they're run. Preschools are typically community-based, or they can be run by the Department of Education. So just something to consider when you're looking into your local preschools, if that's an option that would suit you and your family. Then we have long daycare. These ones are potentially more suitable for working families because they are open those additional hours. So you typically will run a 7 to 6. They are all inclusive for ages 0 to 5 years, and they can be run by councils, private providers, or community providers. So just things to consider when you're going for your first visit, just to look around who the actual long daycare service is being provided by. You have family daycare. This is something where the care takes place in the educator's home. They do have they can only take on small groups. So the ratio is typically 4 children for a family daycare. So it is a much smaller setting. It is a quieter environment. Obviously, having less kids, it is quieter for the children in that environment. And then they also do have some flexible hours or pay for use, rather than having like your term fees or weekly fees, or however the other setting does charge for those fees. And then you have occasional care. This is for irregular or unpredictable schedules. Occasional care will typically have some standard bookings. So you can reserve a place as you would in any of the other services, but they do also have flexibility in those bookings. So you can choose to do, 3 standard days, and then maybe you might need a Friday at a moment's notice, and then they can accommodate those sort of requests because they do have a lot more transitional places. It is useful for those one-off days, or if you have something come up that you weren't expecting, they can be a little bit more flexible. However, it is important to remember that because they do offer this service, there can be limited availability. So it is really transient and dependent on the day. So why does choosing childcare matter? As all of our lovely speakers before me have gone over, the childcare settings that you place your children in, that is going to be your child's first engagement with more that early learning setting and those early learning services. And we know that those are really impactful. I mean, childcare is shaping their social, emotional, and cognitive development. They're interacting potentially for the first time with children their own age. They're navigating all of those social interactions that they potentially haven't been exposed to before. So it really does help them with building those social muscles, as well as that cognitive development in problem solving, and potentially being able to navigate some of these situations on their own, which again, potentially they might not have been exposed to before. We also know that the early education experiences influence children's confidence, their curiosity, and their relationships. as Allana kind of said in the beginning of her presentation, you know, the early years learning framework is the curriculum framework that is embedded all throughout all of the childcare options. And the EYLF is really built to encourage curiosity and to encourage a love of learning in children in those, you know, formative years. When you're looking at childcare, quality of care provides more than just supervision. You want to be seeing, you know, what sort of activities they're offering, what sort of frameworks that they have. They should let you see what their planning cycle looks like when you do your first tour through. So you can have a bit of a look at what kind of activities they're doing the day, how they structure their days out and things like that. And, you know, choosing carefully, as much as I said, it is a personal choice, and it is very heavily dependent on what does align with your values and schedules, but it also, choosing carefully can support longer term development and really encourage those educational outcomes long term. So when you do go to visit a childcare centre, just some things and some prompts of questions to ask. I know sometimes when you walk into a setting that you've never been into before, it can be easy to forget all of these questions that you might have had. So, you know, before you even go to the centre, I would be writing notes down of like what you want to make sure, what are your things that you need to find out from this visit before you leave? Because I know from personal experience, you can get in there and just sort of, you know, there's so much happening, you just forget to ask questions. So some things that you should be asking about the centre are, you know, sort of their regulation compliance. What are their ratios? How many staff to children do they cater for? Things along those lines. What are their opening hours and costs? Again, this is going to sort of factor into your decision making depending on working arrangements and your family composition and things like that. What does a centre include? Some centres will be all inclusive. They'll provide meals, nappies, any extra things like that they'll need. Some centres require you to pack lunches and recess and things like that. It really just depends on the centre and the service. So it's just something good to know so that you know what you're getting into once you've enrolled. It's good to ask questions about staff qualifications and experience, particularly in the room that your child will be going into. It just helps for, I guess, knowing who's in the room, what are their qualifications, how long have they been working with children. I already kind of went over the ratios. How do they communicate with families? So a lot of early education and care services will use online platforms now. So that can communicate with you directly throughout the day, where they can post videos, they can post, you know, some of them will do sort of evaluations through the app, sleep checks. They can go through and say how much your child ate, when they slept, how long they slept. It just gives you those updates regularly throughout the day. But it's important to ask about how those communications happen. And again, really hitting on that curriculum and the activities offered, you could ask to see their curriculum planning and things like that, and they should have that either on display in the rooms or be able to show you what they've been doing in the classroom. Asking a bit more about the outdoor play and sun safety. What time do the children typically go outside? What is their sun safety policy? Is there a requirement for you to bring your own sunscreen, or does the centre provide that? Things around of that nature. And of course, even if your child is too young to start toilet training, it is important just to find out about that centre and how they approach toilet training and toileting of the children, and what those policies and procedures are around that. Also, similarly, it's important to ask how they will accommodate your child's routines in their broader room schedule. So will they kind of try to meet your current schedule with your child, or will they kind of start integrating it with the schedule of the room? So this can do it either way, but I guess it's important to have those conversations so that you make sure that you're comfortable with their approach. Their safe sleep policies and practices. So, you know, what sort of sleep rooms do they have? How often are the children checked? What can you bring to, you know, help soothe your child? Things like of those nature, those nature. What are the illness and injury procedures? So, you know, if your child is sick at school, what is their policy in calling you? When will they call you to come and pick up? Or when your child has been sick at home, what are the exclusion times? All things that, you know, you should just know beforehand. Kind of similar to about the centre, just what food is provided, and if your child needs any additional support with meal times, if they'll accommodate those things. And then just what it looks like for that particular centre on behaviour guidance and discipline, in terms of how do they approach behaviours and things like that. And it's just important to sort of sound out the centre about what their policies and procedures are around those things. So again, when you are, so those are sort of questions you can ask the educators or the centre directors and things like that. And I think it's also important to note that speaking to a range of the staff members on site can be really beneficial as well, because you may get some different perspectives on some of those questions. But when you are there, things to just look out for while you're looking around the centre. So, you know, safety in the room setup. Is it bright and colourful? Does it have a lot of the children's artwork on the walls, things like that? Does it look welcoming, warm and inviting? Do you see a variety of activities laid out for the children in different learning stations? Is a good one to have a look out for. Having a look over at the outdoor environment, and all the different sensory play opportunities that they offer as well. You can have a look at the children's interactions, not only with each other, but also interactions with the staff on site, because that will give you a good idea of how the staff interact on a day-to-day basis, along with how engaged the educators are with the children in their actual play. You know, are there educators sitting in the sandpit with the children? Are there educators sitting at a table doing some crafting activities? Things of that nature to have a look out for. You know, a really good indicator as well is how staff interact with your child directly. Are they just talking to you, or have they gotten down to your child's level and started, you know, talking to them about the centre and things like that? And then I think ultimately it's also really important to ask your child, if your child is old enough to be able to speak or to communicate what they thought of the centre, because that really also can factor into your decisions around which childcare centre or setting or early years setting that you choose. So yep, again, some more resources and support. So you've got starting blocks so that you can look up the service that you're interested in and it will give you the quality ratings. Just again, that could factor into your decision-making process. The New South Wales Department of Education, they have a lot of preschool and early childhood education and care guidance, childcare subsidy. That's something that you can look through on your Centrelink profiles and things like that. That just provides your childcare, your subsidised childcare, so financial assistance in accessing care. But just a note, it is very important to join multiple wait lists, and as soon as you are starting to consider childcare, it is good to get on the wait list, because there is a really high demand for early childhood and care services. Oh. Thank you. Cool. So I'll pass over to Jada now.
All right, so that comes to the end of our mini presentations. We do have a little bit of time now if there are any questions that you guys want to pop in the chat. We still have our full panel of experts here who are happy to answer any questions that you might have. Does anyone want to, any questions at all? I'm not seeing any hands go up. I'm not getting any chats come through. So maybe our experts are just too good at what they do, and they've answered all your pre-questions already. All right, well, if there's no questions, we might wrap that up early then and give everyone a little bit of time back in their day.
I do.
Sorry. We have a question here from Roxanne.
Yeah, sorry, I disconnected, reconnected, and I can't find the hand button from my phone. We live in a multilingualist home, and I started with one sign language and wondering whether I need to change, just because the words are associated to a language other than English. We only speak the other language at home. If she were to go to daycare and they start using the same signs, I was thinking maybe it could help her, but then it's not going to be helpful if they're using Auslan instead of, I think the signs I got from, I didn't check, but I think they're probably like American Sign Language or something, because they were from they're like a Montessori book that I think is written by an American person. So yeah, what would be like the best approach for that would be, because it's early on, to change the signs. She's only 8 months old, so that they align with what might be used at a daycare, or I don't know.
I'll pass it to Sarah now.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for that context. So in hearing your brief situation, I think, yes, it is important to have that universal understanding between what you're using, your daughter's using, and where she is during her day and the teachers that she's with. So if it's from American Sign Language that you were using those signs from, there might be some crossover, but it would be, I would recommend moving across to keyword sign,
Okay.
and having the same signs, because if
Yep.
they're also using those signs with other children, there's also that shared language between
Yeah, for
not
sure.
only the teacher and your daughter, but also maybe other children in the class if they're also using those signs. Yeah. Are you using a lot of signs at the moment, or is it just a handful?
No, we have drink, we have eat. Eat is very similar.
Yeah.
All done, which is different, doesn't look the same.
Sure.
And then feeling okay. But they're kind of the only ones we've got, because I wanted to help her communicate with feeling full and
Yeah.
wanting more food versus just throwing it. I mean, I know that's a natural thing, but it gives her another option versus throwing it away to tell me when she's done.
And you know, but in that context, you can keep using that sign, I would say, because
Yep.
if that's really context specific to her
Okay.
times, you could keep it
Yeah.
as done rather than changing it.
Fair.
Different contexts for finish, you might use finish for other contexts.
Yeah.
Lauren wants to have a say as well.
Sorry, also speech pathologist background. My suggestion would be, if you are going to keep using any of the signs, that it would just be a conversation with the daycare when and if she goes, to explain some of the ways she might communicate that might be different to how they're expecting,
Yeah.
or situations where she might use those alternative signs.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think, where possible, try and build in the Auslan keyword signs rather than American.
Yeah. Well, we've only got so few. I think it would be pretty easy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I did see another couple questions come through in the chat. Oh, just people saying thank you. Anyone else with any questions whilst we've got the experts here? All right, I think that might be it. We'll wrap up for today then, if everyone's got all their questions fully answered. There will be a recording of this, which we sent out to you afterwards. Any questions, feel free to email us, reach us at all of our Playgroup socials. And thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely day.